beware the Beavers. Oregon State's not getting a whole lot of attention right now. Maybe it's because they're technically an independent. Maybe it's because they went just 5-7 last year. But this team looks completely different. They will be completely different. And they could surprise you in 2025. Trent Bray has put together a very solid squad. And obviously last year was disappointing for the Beavers. They started 4-1, but then went 1-6 down the stretch to finish 5-7 and miss out on a bowl game. But you look at the roster now, and you go, man, they should go to a bowl game. They should exceed 6 wins because they've got the roster and the schedule to do it. On the offensive side of the ball, Oregon State only averaged 24 points per game last year. That was the first season where they averaged less than 28 points per game since 2018, so definitely uncharacteristic for this program. A major reason for their struggles was quarterback play. Oregon State quarterbacks combined for 7 touchdowns and 11 interceptions, was eerily similar to how bad the Michigan quarterback play was. Except the Wolverines obviously were able to beat elite teams. Oregon State was not. Now, though, look at who they've got coming in. Malik Murphy transfers in at quarterback from Duke. Threw for over 2,900 yards and 26 touchdowns last year with the Blue Devils. Helped lead them to a 9-win season. A surprising 9-win season in year 1 under Manny Diaz. So he's coming in, competent, solid quarterback play that will greatly exceed the quarterback numbers we saw last year. They return Anthony Hankerson, a guy who rushed for over 1,000 yards last year and 15 touchdowns. Their number 1 wide receiver, Trent Walker, who had 901 reception yards last year, he returns, as does their third receiver, Darius Clemens. And the only concern I see for Oregon State right now is their offensive line, where they only have 44 starts up front. So the offensive line, a bit of a question, but quarterback play will be better. The running game could be better. Anthony Hankerson's a dog. The wide receiver core looking pretty solid. This offense is going to take a massive jump and very well could get back to that 28-point mark that they've been so used to. Defensively, they've got to get better. They absolutely have to get better, and I think they will. They gave up 186 rushing yards per game last year. That's unacceptable. But their number 1 tackler, their safety, Skylar Thomas, does return. Their number 3 tackler, their linebacker, Nico Taylor, returns. And he led the team last year with 2.5 sacks. Now, that does sound pretty low. It's even worse when you realize Oregon State had 7 sacks all of last year. The Beavers had no pass rush and no ability to stop the run. Up front in the trenches, they were getting bullied. Again, allowed 186 rushing yards per game, only mustered 7 sacks. Those numbers have to improve if the team as a whole wants to improve. Again, there's concerns in the trenches, both on the offensive line and the defensive line. They're hoping, though, that Nico Taylor can continue to anchor that. They're hoping a guy like Kai Wallen, transferring in at defensive end from Nebraska, can help impact that, along with a handful of youngsters that played last year for the Beavers and should improve with more experience heading into 2025. Paired with Skylar Thomas back in the secondary is Tyrese Ivey, also at safety. This is a team that, it also actually had TJ Crandall as well from West Virginia in the secondary. So this is a team that in the back 7 looks pretty good. If they can figure out some stuff in the front 7, really specifically the defensive line, could be significantly better on that side of the ball. You take a look at the schedule for Oregon State. They've got the talent, I think, and they've got the schedule, I think, to do some damage here. First 2 games against California and Fresno State are not gimmies by any means, and then the 2 after that, Texas Tech and Oregon, are not any gimmies. So you can make an argument the Beavers could start 0-4. You could say 1-3. I'm going to go out and say right now, just because I've done this, 2-2. I kind of set myself up to skip a couple games there. 2-2 for the Beavers, and here's the breakdown. California, they've got major concerns, right? This is a battle between former Pac-12 teams. Remember, the Pac-12 will be reforming in a way next year. Oregon State and Washington State joining a handful of Mountain West teams. California going to remain in the ACC. But the Golden Bears, despite beating Oregon State last year 44-7, is going to lose this game. They lose their quarterback, Fernando Mendoza, off to Indiana. They lose all, not just one, all of their top rushers. They lose 7 of their top 8 pass catchers and 7 of their top 9 tacklers. Devin Brown, transferring in from Ohio State, is going to be the quarterback for the Golden Bears, but we haven't seen much of him. Saw him briefly in that Cotton Bowl a few years ago against Missouri. That's about it. Is he good enough to lead the Golden Bears to a bowl game? Lead them to a victory in Corvallis, which is a tough place to play, against this improved and hyped up Oregon State team? I'm going to say no. I think Oregon State's got the edge everywhere in this game. They've got the offensive edge for sure. Defensively, Justin Wilcox typically has his team ready to go. You could argue it's a toss-up, but if you want a tiebreaker, it's home field advantage. Season opener, Oregon State's getting that win. And I think they're going to get the win over Fresno State, who is in year 1 now under Matt Entz. They've got a new quarterback, E.J. Warner, who transfers in. Underrated team out of the Mountain West, could surprise a little bit. But again, I just don't think talent-wise, continuity-wise, all those things there are good enough to beat Oregon State, especially in Corvallis. 2-0, and then we did say they lose their next two to Texas Tech and Oregon. That feels self-explanatory. The Red Raiders went all in this year, spent over $10 million in the transfer portal, have a heck of a team. If they can stay healthy, they're a true Big 12 title, maybe even playoff contender. Just don't see Oregon State having enough to win that game in Lubbock, although it will be their first meeting there since 1959. And then Oregon. They have not won in Eugene since 2007. They lost by 35 points last year, 49-14. The Ducks lose tons of players from last year's squad that went undefeated in the regular season. I don't expect another undefeated season, but I do expect them to be in playoff contention. The defense is going to be salty as always. They've got the significant advantage in the trenches. And you could argue, even though we haven't seen much of him, Dante Moore could own the quarterback edge over Malik Murphy. Regardless, they're going to lose this game. The Beavers are 2-2. All right, we're a third of the way through the season. Friday night game against Houston. This intrigues me because the Cougars are going to improve quite a bit. They went 4-8 last year, showed some signs of brilliance, upset Kansas State, hung with Oklahoma. Now they've got 16 starters back. They're coming off a bye week. Connor Wigman comes in at quarterback from Texas A&M. They've got 92 combined starts on the offensive line. And again, a defense that only gave up 22.9 points per game. This is going to be a dogfight. This is not an easy game by any means. So don't just compare records and go, Houston was bad, Oregon State wins. This is going to be tough. I do think Oregon State wins this game. I do. Again, Corvallis, people don't understand. I know they weren't that great at home last year. But prior to that, it's typically a pretty tough place to play. Has been in recent years. Long road trip for the Cougars, who I still think, despite having improved quarterback play, needs Wigman to stay healthy, needs him to make good decisions. I think it's a relatively low-scoring game, but the crowd plays their part. Oregon State gets the win, but then they go on the road and lose to App State. Now, before everybody throws their hands up and freaks out about that, swap them out then. I don't think they're going to beat Houston and App State. I think they split those games. And for me, logically, it made more sense to pick them at home against Houston, a team I think they match up well against with good home field advantage, than to pick them on the road at App State in Boone, which is a very difficult place to play. Boone's going to show out, getting to host technically a power opponent. That's the logic there. And App State, despite being under a first-year head coach in Dow Loggins, I think it's going to improve. They had a losing record last year, which is very rare for the Mountaineers. I think improved quite a bit in 2025. A.J. Swan's in at quarterback, in from Vanderbilt, has shown flashes of brilliance and the ability to lead and play well. I think with an offensive mind, Dow Loggins will thrive in that offense. Tons of transfers on the offensive side of the ball. A very strong secondary, pretty much built through the transfer portal as well, and home field advantage as Oregon State's traveling over 2,700 miles to play them. So I think that's kind of a trap game, if you want to call it that, against the Mountaineers. Again, if you don't like that, have them beat App State. Then they'll lose to Houston. I just don't see them winning both. So through that, they are 3-3 halfway through the season. But then to me, the schedule lightens up significantly. So some tough games in there. I mean, they're playing California, Texas Tech, Oregon, Houston. In the first 6 games, they're playing 4 power conference opponents. And the ones that aren't are App State on the road and a typically solid Fresno State team. So not an easy schedule. But after that, yeah, they've got to play Wake Forest, who's a power conference team. They've got to play Washington State, who's technically a power conference team. But it lightens up to the point where I think they win their next 5 games. 3-3 to 8-3, just like that. Wake Forest will be in for a world of hurt in the ACC, a rebuilding year for the Demon Deacons, now led by Jake Dicker, who was at Washington State last year. But obviously going to be a rebuilding year for them. They have to travel a long way to Corvallis. Oregon State will defend home field. They'll win that. They'll cruise past Lafayette. They come out of their bye week. They take on a Washington State team that I think will improve as the year goes on, but in a bit of a rebuilding year of their own with over 70 new players. They got a veteran quarterback in Zevi Eckhouse who looked good in their bowl game. Got some solid talent coming in from South Dakota State under new head coach Jimmy Rogers. But it's a rebuilding year for the Cougars. I feel very confident in that. And at home, I think they get the job done. They will be playing the Cougars twice this year. First time they've played them twice in the season since 1945. They'll cruise past Sam Houston, who you look on paper and you go, whoa, didn't they win like 10 games in a bowl game last year? They did, but now they lose their head coach and lose a lot of players along with them. New head coach Phil Longo taking over, only 8 starters back, and again, a long road trip for the Bearcats. Oregon State should win that game, and they should cruise past Tulsa as well, who had one of the worst defenses in the nation last year. 42.5 points per game is what they allowed, and nearly allow 500 yards per game. They've got a new coach, only 10 starters back. Oregon State is the better team in every aspect of the game with the exception of home field advantage, and Tulsa doesn't have much of that. So they're 8-3. I mean, 3-3 people are kind of freaking out, and then boom, they go on a run because the schedule lightens up significantly. They come out of their bye week, they play Washington State in Pullman to honor that home and home in the season finale, and I do think they lose that game. And a lot of people might, scoff at that too. But I think it is very difficult to beat a team twice in the same year, let alone twice in the same year, twice in the span of about 4 weeks. I think Washington State and Oregon State will too, but I think Washington State learns a lot from that first meeting. I think both those games are fairly competitive. But in Pullman, where Washington State has won 5 straight over the Beavers, I think they end their year on a high on their senior day to get a solid little bit of momentum heading into the offseason as they prepare for Pac-12 life. Oregon State drops that game, bit of a disappointment, but finished 8-4, which after last year's 5-7 record is a heck of an improvement and will carry some great momentum into next year when the new Pac-12 is formed, practically Mountain West. But regardless, 8-4, solid bowl game, shot at 9 wins, and a chance for a lot of momentum heading into a new conference, finally no longer being independent. You look at the schedule, I think the Texas Tech-Oregon games are non-negotiable. Maybe you want to give them a win over App State. Maybe you want to give them Washington State. You could argue 10-2. Sure, assume they don't slip up anywhere else. I think 10-2 is the ceiling. I've got them at 8-4, which is a good middle ground because it's also assuming they don't slip up against teams that they shouldn't. They don't slip up to Fresno State. They don't slip up to, Washington State on November 1st or California in the opener. This team's got the talent, guys. They were better last year. I think their record showed. They've got a lot of talent in through the transfer portal, a lot of veterans as well. Good mix, and that's what you want in this world of college football now. Great season for the Beavers. 8-4 in 2025. Better days, brighter days, bigger things ahead for them starting next year in the new Pac-12. So guys, as always, thank you so much for watching us here at the Gridiron Expert on YouTube. Make sure to continue to like, comment, subscribe, share our videos, and check out everything down in the description below. That includes our website, thegridironexpert.com, home to our expert picks, home to our weekly newsletters, home to tons of exclusive content there to help you get through this offseason. You do not want to miss out on those. Some of the best analysis and picks in the entire country. Do not miss out. The link for it down in the description below. Once again, as always, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time right here on the Gridiron Expert.
Yeah.